Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining me today, we've got a very special guest. Everyone knows who this man is. He is an Olympic champion. He is the most famous swimming vlogger in the world. Today, we've got Cody Miller.
Thanks for the intro. Appreciate it. It's been a minute since we talked, so this is exciting, man. I appreciate it.
I'm excited too. Obviously, so much has happened with you, with the world that I'm excited to catch up. Let's start with the most immediate past. You swam in San Antonio this past weekend. From the outside looking in, you put up some really solid times. I just watched your meet vlog about it.
Cool.
What did you think about the meet this past weekend?
I think it was a mixed bag, more good than bad. January is an interesting month in any year, like in a non-COVID related year, because it's like a weird period where I think I said that in the vlog. You've got some people that really shoot to go fast at that period of time. Like some people shave down, and then you've got other people that are like just kind of coming out of that like really heavy volume grindy time, like Christmas training, which is like kind of where we were at. So we were fortunate to have a lot of long course training this December. I mean, I've had more long course from US Open. So like November on up until now, I've had more long course training than we've done in like legitimately years. And it's been awesome. Like I've really enjoyed it. And I think it's really going to pay off. And I actually had never raced in January. I've never raced a long course meet in January, not since turning pro. So I didn't really know what to expect in terms of like performance, right? Like you obviously always want to do well. But I'm coming off of this training phase that was awesome and very challenging. So just kind of, not knowing what to expect. But I think performance wise, I was, you always want to be better, but I was happy with what we got. Interesting. I talked to a lot of people about that pool, and I have really mixed signals from a lot of people. I didn't find really any issues with it. I thought it was okay. I don't know if you talked to people, but I think when you look at the results of that meet as a whole, it was pretty underwhelming with a couple exceptions, right? With Kiernan and a few other big swims. Yeah. So I don't know if it's the fastest pool, but I guess that's like a topic of another conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I know I heard at least one person, maybe a couple, saying like, "Oh, this pool's like super shallow," and I know you mentioned like you could stand up at like the 20-meter mark,
Yeah,
which is odd for a competition pool, and that is interesting to think about. Like, does that really affect swims like that? But you have a good point. The swims, it's January, so there's a lot of factors, a lot of people in different places, but yeah, it's like overall the times were
meh.
fine. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing to think about, especially moving forward where I believe as of now, same pool for the pro swim in March. And then if that, depending on how things go, because that was one of the pools for US Open. Now they've hosted one pro swim, going to be two. Who's to say it won't be 5? It's like it could be interesting. That could be the whole everyone's Olympic prep.
It could be. Who knows how many more times they're gonna have to race there. The other one thing, I don't want to harp around the pool too much, but the other weird thing was the lanes were very narrow. So like you could stand in the middle of the pool and stretch out your arms, and your arms were in the other lanes. And in any other like real Murtha pool that US Swimming hosts meets at, like that's not the case. So that was kind of strange. Like I remember the day before we started racing, maybe it was 2 days before, Lily and I were doing our little practice, and they hadn't brought in, USA Swimming brings in their own lane lines, right? Because they've got like the official thicker, nicer lane lines. They had the lane lines that they use there regularly, and they were just all over the place. Like one person would swim and the lane line would move over like 4 feet, and Lily and I were kicking next to each other, and both lane lines were like on our shoulders. Like that's how narrow it was. And
Oh my
obviously that's
God.
because of the lane lines, but it was kind of funny. So yeah, I mean, who knows what like the racing schedule is going to look like in terms of where we get to compete here on out. It's a big question mark.
Yeah. Which, I guess that's kind of how it is. But, also this was your first meet as a dad. You're officially in the club now. Which I'm saying I'm not in the club. I'm not a dad, but you're in the dad club. What is for the past couple months? Tell me about fatherhood.
Thanks, man. It's been crazy. Honestly, I mean, I'm obviously like a pretty optimistic person, but it has been better than I expected in terms of how tired and physically taxed I would be, right? Because I've been warned by like talking to Lochte and talking to Greers and all these other people that you're never going to get good sleep again. And obviously there have been nights that have been really hard, that have been brutal. But overall, I think we've been lucky, like fingers crossed. But Axel sleeps really well. We very regularly get 5 hours in a single chunk. And for someone, for a newborn, that's like a big deal. I don't know anything about babies, but everyone tells me that's really good. So, my sleep schedule has been not as good, but it hasn't been nearly as bad as I thought it would be. And I'm also like super fortunate that my wife, Allie, like very much understands that I have to get up in the morning and swim. And she's still on maternity leave. So when he does wake up and stuff, like she takes the brunt of it, the most of it. But it's also just made me like, I'm already like a very scheduled, diligent kind of a person, right? Like I don't like to procrastinate. I like to get stuff done. But now that I have the baby, it's like forced me to be like even more on top of things. Cause like when I have time to actually do something like editing, if like I'm working on a video today, that's probably going to take me 6 hours to cut together. Right. And if I have like 45 minutes of time, like I need to take it, and it might be in like a weird spot during the day. But if he goes to sleep, it's like, okay, now I got to work. So I have to be like much more managed with my time when I'm doing
Yeah.
stuff. And I mean, yeah, but it's been really fun, man. He's such a cute little guy.
That's super cool. I mean, and I watched the video where you shared a little emotion and you said like this is the kind of dad I want to be, and I think that's one of the best parts about you and your vlog is that you really open up to your audience, and I mean that was super cool. So it's good to hear that so far it's been so good.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really think about what it was going to be like to be a dad until like it happened. Like I like knew it was coming, and like we were ready for it. Allie and I had talked about it in advance before even getting pregnant. But it wasn't until like after I had the baby that I like shook my world up, and I was like, okay, like I had to kind of reassess and kind of think about like, what is this actually going to be like? It's like, you don't really realize it till you're in it. And, like I didn't really have much of a relationship with my dad. And, but I was very fortunate that swimming provided me with a lot of those, to fill in a lot of those gaps. And, I want to be able to do that for my kid in the right way. Right. So, hopefully I can do that.
Yeah. I don't know. Is Allie's, I know your mom lives in Vegas, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
Good
then,
memory.
is Allie's family close, or are you guys able to, get that family time? And obviously there's, FaceTime and Zoom now and stuff. It's like, is Axel able to meet the more estranged family members?
Yeah, so Allie's parents are pretty close. They're about 30 minutes away from us. But
Okay.
they're both retired, and they spend like a third of the year in Florida. So like they're not, so like right now, like basically he was born and they were like, peace, we're going to Florida. And then we were just kind of on our own, which is fine. I don't expect anybody to, do anything for me. But he's got to meet them. He's gotten to meet a few of like the pro swimmers here that are all getting regularly COVID tested. Like Lily is like, I mean, I know Lily really well personally, so I know that she's good with kids. People who don't know her personally, like that only know like the persona, would think she's probably not the best with kids, but it's just, she's a rock star. But with a baby, it's like a whole nother thing. She's so funny. And same with Blake. Blake would get pissed that I say this, but Blake Pepperoni is really good with babies. He like holds them and his eyes light up. It's really funny. Like you get to see who people really are, man. It's great.
That's awesome. Dude, Lily's going to be like a kid's gym teacher, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So her parents are teachers. She's wanted to be a gym teacher like since she was young. Like that's what she's going to do. Like she's got no desire to get some big job and make a lot of money. She's like, nope, this is what I want to do. Like, okay.
Yeah. That's super cool. Auntie Lily and Uncle Blake to the rescue.
Yeah. For real.
That's great. I mean, tell me about some of the surprising things. You said, okay, I kind of, this is what I expected. I knew I wasn't going to get a bunch of sleep, and some things have gone better. I'm not asking like what's gone worse, but like, what are some of the things that have surprised you about being a dad?
So just how physically, like I said, the sleeping has been much better. But just the amount of time that you have to be watching the baby and giving it attention and like just nurturing it during the day, like all day, is very exhausting. Is very draining. There's sometimes maybe 3 hours in the middle of the day where I'm just like, I have to be on and I have to be paying attention and like bouncing him and moving him and feeding him every 30 minutes or whatever, or anticipating what he needs. Right. Like, when he starts crying, it's for a couple of different, like there's a few possibilities, right? He's got to poop, he's got to burp, or he's got to sleep soon. He gets really fussy when he's got to sleep. You kind of got to like figure it out. And so just the amount of time, like there have been a few days where where Allie will leave the house and go stay with a friend or go to her parents' house or whatever, just so she can get away. Cause she spends way more time with them than I do. Cause I'm the one who's going to the pool training and I've got more of a schedule. And so those days when I have them for 6, 7, 8 hours unbroken, I have the utmost respect for parents, especially single parents, because it's very draining. And I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like you're pouring your energy into this little being that doesn't really know what the heck's going on. And it just takes and takes and takes. And like, you have no choice. Like, that's what you have to do, So as far as things I didn't expect, it's like one of those things that I never really thought about. Like what's it going to be like to like have to like keep this little human happy and alive next to me for hours and hours every single day, Like it's not for everybody. It's tough.
It's not for everybody. Think about it before you have a kid. Moral of the story.
Think about it.
Has the home pool helped with that situation? I mean, are you using that a lot lately, or with pools, with your pool being open, are you not using that as much lately?
I haven't used it since like early December.
Okay.
But it's starting I mean, it's like probably warm enough now for us to use it, but I hadn't had a need to use it. So a lot of people ask me like, what do I do with it? Whether or not I was going to drain it or not. Don't really need to drain it because it's pretty well insulated. And I just put like another super layer of insulation on top of the water underneath the retractable cover.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think as we kind of bleed into February and the weather starts to warm up just a little bit, like if it's over 50, Allie can swim in it. So she's going to be the one who like really utilizes it more. It's just been a little too cold and she doesn't want to get sick. She just doesn't want to get a cold or whatever, be out there when it's that cold for an extended period of time. But it was really nice when I got it earlier this summer. Like it was a long stretch of time where it was like, I mean, it was like a blessing. And I think that in the future here, it's going to be as well. So I'm like super for it. Like talk about privilege, like having like a very expensive endless pool in your backyard. Like most people don't have that. And so just having that, I recognize how ridiculous that is.
Well, and I feel like that's also something that you maybe couldn't do if you were based in a bigger city, but like Bloomington, Indiana, it's like that's, I'm guessing, not as much of an expense and a lot more doable in a smaller town.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And like we are in the Midwest, so we do have winter, but like Bloomington is really far south. And so our winters are very tame. We get like very little snow. I mean, like right now it's like 50 degrees outside. So
Nice.
by like late February, March time, yeah, we would absolutely be able to swim in that pool fairly regular. That's like one of Indiana's like big recruiting tactics is like it's the warmest school in the Big Ten. That's like one of the things I always say. And like when you think about it,
Nice.
it's definitely true. You know, it's not bad.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. I just figured Indiana cold, but
Yeah, I mean that's what I thought, and that's what most people think. And make no mistake, like there is winter, so like we do get snow. But over the like 10, 11 years I've lived here, we've only had a couple winters that like were really brutal. The last few winters, we hardly had any snow. And yeah, and then when you look at like the Big Ten as a conference, it's like you got Minnesota, that's cold. You got Michigan, that's cold. Wisconsin, that's cold. Indiana, people just assume that and kind of associate it, and it's not the same thing. It's really not. And now that I have a house with a garage, I've prolonged my ability to live here. No more scraping windshields.
Dude, seriously, that's such a nice leisure.
Yeah,
Just to have a garage. That's great.
it's big.
It's big.
Yeah.
I mean, so while we're on this subject, you know, during the quarantine, before you had that pool, I mean, we again kept up with the vlogs, but it's like you were kind of all over the place. And once you got back to consistency via getting back into IU as well as the endless pool in your backyard, I mean, how big was that for you?
Oh man. Oh, it was like a combination of things. It was like a sigh of relief, like, oh, finally, like we're back to a sense of normalcy.
Mm.
To have a routine and a schedule to kind of fall into. Also just the security of knowing like where you're going to go. Cause there was, I mean, we're talking months where almost on a day by day basis, we didn't know where we were going to swim. Like we didn't know what our options were. And like, it's crazy to look back at all the stuff we went through. I mean, at one point we were driving 3 hours a day to get to a pool just to do singles. At one point, we were like swimming at Lily's pool in her hometown because the mayor was like, the whole country can shut down, but if the Olympics are happening, you can swim here. So I was driving to her town, which is even further away. It's like over 2 hours. And then I was staying the night with like a buddy's mom, like at her house. So and then waking up, it was kind of madness. So when we finally, when things kind of started opening up back here again, I think it made me just appreciate it. I mean, my hope is that everyone can take something away from the lockdowns and look at it like with a greater sense of appreciation. And that's certainly what I did, because since moving here to come to college, I probably hadn't gone more than 2 or 3 months away from the IU pool. I think the longest stretch I went away from the IU pool was probably when I was at the Olympics. I was gone for about 2 months. And then, you know, when lockdown happened, we were out of there for like 7, 8 months, something like that. So that hadn't happened like ever. And it was just like, I remember like the feeling I got when I first walked back in. I was like, I felt like I was at home again, you know? It was very, very happy moment.
Yeah,
Dude,
man,
it was wild.
that is wild. I mean, especially like you said, I mean, I feel like the IU group specifically, you guys were just going to every length you could to find that pool time. Yeah. Did you ever take a solid break, especially after the Olympics were announced as postponed?
Yeah. So really the only extended break we took was we took 8 days right after the games were postponed, because there was like a good 2.5 weeks where everything was shut down, but the games had not yet been postponed. And so that time was probably the hardest time, because we were scrambling to find places to train in the hopes of being able to train. Also, kind of like we kind of thought that it's easy to look back now and be like, oh yeah, they were definitely going to postpone the games. But like in that moment of time, we didn't know. There was so much uncertainty and it was very scary. And that was when we were traveling to Lily's town, because that was like our last resort, because she's like royalty there, you know, and just kind of flying under the radar. And I mean, dude, yeah, I just look back at it. I'm like, dude, this is absolutely, absolutely insane. I don't even know how to describe it.
I mean, What so like after going through all that, like you said, I mean, the stress of just trying to make these ends meet, and then it's like finally, okay, they're postponed. We can like take a sigh, take a break. I mean, how'd you spend those 8 days?
Uh, I started running. I started running. I like felt like I like not, and it wasn't because like I was like I gotta train to stay in shape. It was nothing like that. It's like I needed something to do. I needed like a schedule. I needed to tire myself out so that the 10 hours a day I was laying on my couch playing Animal Crossing with Allie, I didn't feel like I was wasting my life. You know what I mean? Like, dude, we were playing
Absolutely.
so
We
much.
were all there.
Exactly. So I started running a lot and I got pretty good at running for a while. I carried that on for a while. Yeah, Allie and I played like a lot of Animal Crossing. We kind of bonded over that, like an unhealthy amount. Like, dude, I don't know if you've ever played Animal Crossing, but have you?
A long time ago, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I joined like a Reddit forum and I was trading resources
That's how
and
you know
using
you're in.
using the turnip stock market by visiting islands of people who like live in Japan and China. Like I was communicating with people who didn't speak English to like yeah, it was like I was in deep, man. It wasn't good. Uh, you know, it was a wild time. And I was just trying to keep Allie happy because she was pregnant. So, you know, harder on her, quite honestly. My God.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that also. I mean, obviously, it's going all right for you all and everything went okay, but like having this came up a lot. It's like having a baby during quarantine sounds kind of stressful.
You could say that. You could say that. Yeah, like, and the funny thing is, like, I really hope that they're not gonna like name this generation of kids like lockdown babies or COVID babies or something. Especially because like we got pregnant before any of this happened. Like we were
Yeah.
pregnant before all that. Like we kind of planned this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and yeah, like early on, we didn't really know. Like we didn't know. Like when the lockdowns first started happening, like our perception of what COVID was that this is something that could potentially kill like 10% of the population or something insane, right? Like
Yeah.
we thought it was going to be like catastrophic. And so being pregnant with that knowledge was very, very scary.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of misinformation out there, whatever, like we don't need to get into that, but now we have a little bit better of an understanding of like what the virus is, right? Like what the death rate is, like how, obviously it's horrible, but it's not what we feared it could have
It's
been.
not 10%.
Correct. It's nowhere near it's not even 1%. So
Right.
not to downplay anything, not to not no disrespect to anybody who suffered from this at all, but it's not that drastic. So we got through it, right? Like we got through it, but there were moments of panic and it was quite scary, I think everybody has stories like that.
Yeah. And I mean, so, but another interesting part of that is that, it's like you obviously planned it and you obviously planned it to happen after trials in the
Yeah.
Olympics. And so, it's like, um, you hear about people having kids. I mean, Phelps had a kid before the Olympics. Petey now has a kid.
Yeah.
It's like, did it give you a new spark for your swimming?
In a way, yes. Because I like we like you said, we planned this pregnancy around hopefully, having the baby after the Olympics. And so at first there were times when I was kind of like earlier this year, I was kind of bummed about it and I was kind of disappointed because I felt like in my head having this baby was going to negatively affect my training to the point where I may not my season won't be as good as I would have wanted it to be, right? And the crazy thing now is now that he is here and it has like totally shaken up my whole life and perspective and everything. It's like, it's weird because I do feel like I have a whole new lease on not just life, but like my swimming career and where I'm at, like mentally, I feel like I'm in a better place now this January than I was last January. I really feel that way because I feel like last January I was putting more pressure on myself to like perform and to train well and to be prepared and to make the team again, all those things. And those things aren't all bad, right? You got to put that kind of pressure on yourself. But I feel like it's less now because I think going through COVID and now having this kid, like everything's just kind of like, it's going to be what it's going to be. Like there are only so many things I can control. And I just feel like a little bit more mellow and zen about it. And I'm like, just like, I'm happier, which is good. And then on top of that, the crazy thing is like, I'm definitely training better now than I have arguably in years. Like Ray told me like a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was right at the turn of the new year, that he hasn't seen me train this well since before Rio. And that made me like, and Ray does not give out BS compliments. He does not. That's not Ray's style. And so when Ray told me that, I was like, okay, like I'm on to something, like things are going well. And I think all of that just kind of stems from where you're at mentally in your personal life. Like it all bleeds together, right? We do our best to compartmentalize as athletes, but it's all got to kind of come together harmoniously. And I feel really fortunate right now for sure. It's wild, man. Having a kid's wild.
That's really cool. And speaking of Ray, we had him on the podcast not too long ago, and he talked about this wild concept called proprioception.
Oh my God.
Are you familiar? Is this a big buzzword at IU?
I've heard about it. I've heard about it more because of the podcast. Like a lot. Like I think Blake and Zach were talking, like we're joking around about it. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I mean, do you have anything to say about it? Because essentially, if for those of you who don't know, and I'm acting like I'm a genius about it, I had to look this word up.
Yeah, I did.
So
too.
I didn't know it. Essentially, it's mind-body connection and right. how you're connecting in the water. So what are your thoughts on this proprioception and just how IU focuses on connecting in the water?
Well, one thing that Ray has really emphasized with us, specifically the pros and like the higher end athletes, really the last few years, especially coming off of the last Olympics, was our mental state outside of the water, our how we balanced our personal lives outside of the water, and how kind of what I was just saying a few minutes ago, how everything kind of needs to bleed together harmoniously in order for your performance to be at its very best, right? So like when I think about the mind-body connection and how you're performing in the water, and when I think about how Ray describes that word that we all had to look up, I honestly think that like Ray's philosophy has shifted to put more emphasis on how we are actually feeling and what's going on in our lives. And that's forced him to, maybe not forced isn't the right word. He's invested himself more in us as people because he realizes that is obviously what's more important at the end of the day. When your swimming career ends, that relationship matters. But then also just, you've got to be happy and healthy. And coming off of the last Olympics, like we had a bunch of people in our group make it, and a bunch of us won gold medals. And there's no manual that tells you how to come off of that. And I know that sounds like we're coming from a place of privilege and, oh, boo-hoo, like you won a gold medal, your life's great. But the reality is once you climb Mount Everest and you have to come back down, when you have a dream your whole life of doing something and then you finally accomplish that, it changes you. And you have to reassess like what matters to you, what's important to you. Like what is your ultimate goal, as all of ours was making this one team and doing this one thing. And so when I think about that, I think about how Ray is invested in us personally, not just in the water. So, and I emphasize that because when that happens and that trust is there and that relationship is there and that sense of harmony outside the water, outside training is there, then when you're in the water, it all just comes together because it's easier. When everything else is firing on all cylinders, then when you get in the water, it's just like things are just going to fall into place. And I think that Ray has really honed in on that the last few years. I've seen it personally. I've seen it with other athletes, and obviously that bleeds into every other aspect of his coaching. So, I mean, yeah, it's a wild topic, right? Like when you want to dive into it, like, but that's kind of how I view it.
I got chills at one point when you were talking about that. Because especially it's like you mentioned, it's like a lot of you made the team, a lot of you won gold medals, and especially heading into trials, I don't think like Blake wasn't on anyone's radar. Gold medal in the relay. Lily wasn't on. I mean, Lily was kind of on the radar, but like not a lot. Gold medal on the relay and individually. You were in the breaststroke field, but not on the radar. Gold medal on the relay, bronze individually. It's like, yeah, I mean, and especially when you're thinking about from Ray's perspective, he's going from like, okay, we can do it to like, yeah, just having 3 athletes win 5 medals, like you said, and 4 of them gold.
Yeah, like Ray. I mean, I've been swimming for Ray for over 10 years now, and I'm well aware of Ray's reputation of being kind of a hard ass. And the reality is he has high expectations. And, you're either able to live up to those expectations or you're not, as is the case with most coaches. But one thing I'll say is that Ray has evolved a lot over the last 10 years that I've known him, and especially the last 5 years since the last Olympics, as have we all, like as have I, because as I just kind of alluded to earlier, like once you go through that moment, once you summit Everest, everything changes, and it forces you to put things in perspective, and it's not always easy. I remember one of the first major trips that I made on the U.S. national team was dual in the pool in 2013. And it was in Glasgow, Scotland. And I remember being on this team with all these Olympic gold medalists from the prior Olympics in London. And I was standing on deck, and I remember listening to Tyler Clary, who had just won a gold medal in London and then won a bronze medal at Worlds like 4 months prior it was in Barcelona.
Yeah.
And he's standing on deck talking to Jack Roach, the great Jack Roach. God, love that guy. Love that
legend.
Man. Legend, right? And Tyler was talking to Jack. I was totally eavesdropping. I was just kind of sitting there on the bleachers, like, listen to this conversation. Like, oh my God, what is he saying?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he was just utterly struggling with where he fit in to swimming and where he fit in the world. Like he was lost, and he was borderline depressed. And I think that a lot of that is public knowledge about how he has battled depression ever since, and had to kind of reevaluate what was important in his life. And that's a common thing for a lot of Olympians to go through. You hear about that a lot. And I tell that story because at that time, when I was listening to that, I couldn't comprehend that. I didn't understand how someone who just won an Olympic gold medal could be so distraught like that. Like my brain could not process that. I didn't get it. And it wasn't until after I had some of my own experiences, fortunately, that I'm like, okay, like I understand this now. And then that's where the value of good coaches that invest themselves and have a holistic perspective, as I think Ray has, really matters.
Yeah. And like you said, I was going to bring that up. It's like so many athletes have gone through that, right? It's like we've seen that publicly. Like we saw it with Phelps after 2008. And, like you said, there's lots of examples. And I think, it's like a gold medal doesn't bring happiness. It just brings a gold medal at the end of the day. And like you said, having that support system around you and needing to keep evolving, keep changing those values. I think that's one thing that makes Dressel such an anomaly to people on the outside. But then you start talking to him and you listen to what he's saying, and it's like, this dude's constantly evolving, and he's built himself into a machine. He's built himself into this person that can just keep raising the bar, not just shoot for, I want a gold medal or I want that. And I'm sure that his support system he keeps them pretty close to the chest. And I'm sure that's a big part of his routine as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point. But so mind-body connection, proprioception, if you want to hear more about that, go listen to the Ray Lewis podcast.
Such a goofy word.
Dude, yeah. It's funny. It's okay. So while we're on the topic of Olympics, the summit, you talked about summiting Everest, and I think in the US, the men's medley relay has been at the top of Everest for so long. Last summer, we saw someone else summit Everest, right? We saw Britain kind of take the torch. They beat out the US for gold. I want you to put on your analyst hat for just a minute, and heading into next summer, men's 400 medley relay. What do you think it takes for the U.S. to be back on top? And obviously, we don't even know who's going to be on that relay. But it's interesting. We don't know who's going to be on our relay. We know who's going to be on Britain's relay, and we know kind of what their strategy is and what they're going to look like. You as one of the breaststroke and contingency in the U.S., what do you think it takes for the U.S. to regain gold in that event?
Well, I mean, there's so many different factors that play into that. You could do an entire hour-long podcast kind of speculating and nitpicking and talking about the different variables, the different splits, the different times. I think at the end of the day, the Olympics is a different beast. And yeah, we lost last summer, but performing at World Championships and performing at the Olympics are two different things. And I'm not trying to say that those Britain, the Great Brits can't perform under the big lights at the games, but it's not an apples to apples comparison in my opinion. So from my perspective, I've been to several long course World Championships and I've been to one Olympic Games, and the atmosphere and the energy on deck at the Olympics is radically different than at World Championships. That's not to say that there's not pressure at World Championships. That's not to say that there aren't nerves. That's not to say it's not a big deal, because it is. Like those things matter. But right now we're living in a time where the Olympics is the pinnacle, and it's the only thing that people really care all that much about. And so I think that finding the right group of guys that can perform in the moment is what it's going to take. And I know that that's vague and not specific at all, but I think that that's the biggest factor. And fortunately for us, because of our trials process and because of the way that Team USA operates in preparation for the games itself, that it's always the most prepared group. They're always the most battle-hardened group. And that's why we win the most medals at all the games. That's why the 2016 Olympics was the most successful games ever, winning more gold medals than any other team in history because of that preparation and going through that gauntlet. And, the guys that are going to be on that relay, whoever they are, like they're going to scratch, claw, and genuinely earn their place. And they'll be fit and battle hardened when the time comes. And other countries don't have that. I mean, other countries don't have the gauntlet that is Olympic trials and the clout that comes with being associated with that team. Not to boost our own egos, but that's just the way that it is. So I would love to dive into times and splits and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I think that is probably the best answer to that question.
I'm with you. I think, like you said, you've been on both stages, and it's just different.
Yeah.
Olympics to Worlds, it's different. So let's shift to ISL. Obviously you weren't able to be a part of it this season, but you've been in it, and I'm sure you've heard how the Budapest bubble went. Give me your thoughts on how you thought Budapest went just from watching.
Yeah, from a spectator standpoint, it was very enjoyable. I watched almost every single meet. I think I missed 3. There were a few that were here on the East Coast very early in the morning. And make no mistake, I woke up for a few of those. I did. Yeah. I woke up and watched them before practice and even listened to it on my way. It's so entertaining. I really enjoyed it. I swim with a lot of people that went to that meet. I've talked to a lot of people, and I think at the end of the day, the word that comes to mind is like, it was a success. It was a success on almost every front. They were able to protect everyone. No one really, they didn't have any major outbreaks. No one, as far as COVID goes, like it all worked out. And I think that it gave the league and the athletes an idea of like what the future could look like in terms of another season. And in this upcoming season, they're discussing doing multiple camps like the one that they just did in Budapest, just shorter. And I definitely think that's the move. We can nitpick things here and there that they did right or wrong. But overall, I'm just genuinely thrilled for where we are as a sport, like as a fan of the sport, because as we just said, like the only thing people like really care about is the Olympics. And coming as someone who has like achieved that dream and lived that and I love it, I want that to change. I want our sport to be legitimate every single year. I want people to care every year. I want athletes to come out of college and to be able to get on a pro team and make money, right? Like I had to wash cars and detail motorcycles right when I got out of college just to pay for rent for 6 months so that I could keep training for nationals in hopes that I would make a team. Fortunately for me, it worked out. But a lot of people that are in similar positions to me coming out of college don't really have anything. And in order for our sport to grow and boom, we need that. And I think they're on the right track. It's not perfect, but yeah, that's like my takeaway, man. I mean, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I want an NBA Finals every year.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So last topic before we close out today is, we talked about it before we hopped on, but it's like in a time where everyone's stuck at home and activity is severely limited, producing content is a big deal, and it's important because people need something to distract them or to invest in. And, you're one of the biggest content creators right now in our sport. And so maybe a little vague, but it's like, just what has it been like to keep producing this vlog that you have started and now make a living on, and it now affect a lot of people with during this pandemic?
Yeah, it's been crazy. Like I did have to get a little creative when I didn't have pools in terms of like what I was going to do. But then I just kind of thought, man, there is like decades of awesome swimming history that I could kind of dive into. And that's kind of what I did. Like I did videos breaking down some old races, some of them mine, some of them ones that I watched when I was younger. And to this day, still making videos. Like I like have to take a step back sometimes and like realize like what I'm doing, which is just basically producing like it's kind of like a TV show for swimmers, which is like what I would have wanted as like a 12, 13, 16-year-old, 18-year-old swimmer. Like if Brennan Hansen had a TV show where he was like, I'm going to take you through this breaststroke practice, that would be the greatest thing in the world to me. Like I would have paid 100%. All of my allowance, all of my money. I didn't even get allowance. I didn't have that luxury. All of the money that I earned doing other things to watch that kind of stuff, and so it's fun. And fortunately, it's given me a means to legitimately support my family, and continue swimming. Like I can keep swimming as long as I'm enjoying it and people like the content that I'm making. Like it's got to be somewhat good, right? Like people have to like it. Otherwise, what are we doing here? So yeah, I guess during lockdown and stuff, it was a little challenging, but being back in the pool now, like I said, got that renewed sense of love for it. And I enjoy it. And I don't get to do this as much now because I don't really interact with the public as much. Like just going to this past meet in San Antonio, no spectators. So the only people that were there were like some people from USA Swimming that I knew and other athletes that I see at meets. Like I saw Ryan Held, gave him a big hug. That was it, Normally I get to see like 100+ fans or whatever. And a lot of the time, some young swimmers will scream my name and come up to me and tell me that they like the videos that I make. And that is like really, truly rewarding and is a weird feeling that I never anticipated. but that I kind of cherish. So hopefully we'll get back to being able to have fans someday, you know, but please. But like you said, like we talked about before we went live, you know, having avenues for people to put their time into and, you know, take their mind away from whatever is going on, you know, having that form of entertainment and content in the world that we cherish and spend a lot of time in is important. And that's why, like I said, I'm very happy that like SwimSwam is thriving, that you guys are putting out content, because like that stuff, it matters. Like it really matters. And it really legitimately makes a difference for a lot of young swimmers out there. I mean, it's crazy. I don't want to go off too much on a tangent here, but like, it's crazy. I saw a couple of the Sandpiper swimmers, you know, the club team I grew up swimming for, and they're in high school, and like they know all sorts of stuff about different college programs, like what certain coaches are like, what some of the athletes at those schools go, what their records are like. They have this knowledge of college swimming that literally did not exist when I was being recruited. Did not exist. I didn't know anything about NCAA swimming. I didn't really understand what different programs training cycles were like, you know, what different coaches' philosophies were, because there wasn't an outlet that provided you that kind of stuff. And that's what you guys do. And like, if I was 16 again and that existed, good God, man, like it's incredible. Like we are living in a very privileged time. Like it's amazing. So yeah, man, it's just, I'm very happy to, you know, hopefully brighten someone's day, spread a little bit of knowledge, and just kind of, you know, make people happy, man. That's all.
Yeah. From the nerdier side of me, I have to ask, what does it take you 6 hours to edit a vlog?
Dude, sometimes it does. This one that I'm working on, I think is going to. Most of the time, not that much. Most of the time it's like probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 4. And a lot of it is like little things. Like when I film at the pool with a GoPro audio, when it gets wet, sucks. So I spend a lot of time doing like little audio adjustments here and there. That takes time. There's just a lot of, I mean, we don't need to listeners don't give a crap about this, but you know, I spend a lot of time. I invest a lot of time in some of these videos. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, Cody, I appreciate you coming on. It's so great talking to you as always. Any parting thoughts before we sign off today?
You know, I just kind of like what we were saying earlier. I just hope that this last year has been like a whirlwind for everybody. Everybody's got a horror story. And I genuinely hope that we all just come away with a little bit more appreciation for what we have, especially in the world of swimming, because it is a privileged sport to be able to like dive into a pool every day. Even though it sucks sometimes, like waking up in the morning, jumping into a freezing cold pool, people don't want to do it. It is a luxury. And like, I think we need to kind of relish that a little bit. So, you know, that's all.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.